We could be here for a while, couldn't we? Take your Bibles and find Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians, the 4th chapter tonight. Hope you guys have had a good afternoon. I saw some of you playing volleyball. How many of y'all played volleyball? All right. How many of y'all went on a hike? I know you guys got on a hike. Several others got on a hike. Is Canada? Did y'all go see Canada? Is it still over there? All right. Good deal on Canada. We're glad it's still there. And how many of y'all took a nap because you are spiritual? Amen. That's the spiritual thing to do. How many of you have eaten all day long? Anybody here eaten all day long? How many of y'all are bigger for it? It's lovely. But thank you for letting Bethany and me come to your conference and teach you God's Word and talk with you. A privilege is ours, and so we're super thankful for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In this session, we're talking about mending a broken heart or winning at marital conflict. And the outline will be pretty simple tonight, but quite a bit to talk through. We're going to begin by considering the source. That's where we'll start. We're considering the source, and you'll find that there beside a point 1 if you want to go ahead and get the main points. Just the 1, 2, 3. There's 3 points tonight. 4 points, actually. Consider the source. See that there? Number 1, consider the source of our conflict. Number 2, down towards the bottom of page 14, determine the course. Notice my little rhyme there. Did y'all catch that? The source, the course. Come on, that was good. Y'all, I worked hard on that. The source, the course. If you go to page 15, number 3 is the steps. And number 4, the fill in the blank is get help. Always be willing to get help when you need it. But we're going to start with the source, and then talk about the course, and then determine the steps, and then just a reminder at the end about getting help. But let's start in Ephesians chapter 4. And are you aware of the fact that conflicts are normal to a marriage? Did you all know that? Conflicts are normal to a marriage. Did you all know that? Let me try that again. Conflicts are normal to a marriage. Did you all know that? Yes. And I suppose you've experienced that, haven't you? Now, my wife and I have been married almost 31 years. We have a happy marriage and a good marriage, and we love teaching on marriage. So we were just sitting at dinner just a moment ago, and my daughter, who is 15, leans over and says, "What are you speaking on tonight?" And I said, Bethany said, "Dad's going to speak on winning at marital conflict." And my daughter said, how did she say that? I can't remember now. Oh, she said, "Like you practiced this week?" I was like, well, that's a little personal. And part of the problem of traveling with a teenager is that anytime you have something to discuss, she's listening in, and sometimes you don't know she's listening in. But apparently she was. We had a little discussion this week, and apparently our daughter was listening in. Aren't y'all excited about that? And we certainly were. So Charity is really glad I'm speaking tonight because she feels like that we figured it out this week. So you guys are in good hands, all right? I'm ready to teach you what I learned, okay? So here's Ephesians chapter 4. Look in chapter 4, verse 1, and he talks here about that we are to walk worthy of the vocation wherewith we are called. Do y'all know that idea there? So you're saved. Are all of you believers? So you're saved. You're on your way to heaven. You're to walk correctly, walk worthy of the calling in your life. And he tells us how to do it here in verse 2 with lowliness, or we would say humility and gentleness, with patience or long-suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring, watch this verse 3, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. This is a passage about the church, of course, but it's also a passage about individual Christians. Did you know that you have to practice humility? You have to practice gentleness and patience. You have to work at forbearing one another in love. You know what the word forbear means? It means to tolerate each other in love. So sometimes a spouse rubs you the wrong way, a spouse upsets you, but we forbear in love, and we have to work. Verse 3 says, at keeping the unity of the Spirit. So then he talks about that and talks about the church in this next section from verse 4 down to verse 16. He's talking about the church and why we have the church and why we need the church. And then in verse 17, he picks up the thought that he started in verses 1, 2, and 3. This I say therefore, verse 17, this I say therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk. Now stop right there. You know what he's saying? If you're a Christian, you don't handle life the way the world does. You don't handle problems the way the world handles problems. You don't pursue a marriage the way the world pursues a marriage. You don't raise your children the way the world raises their children. You are not in the world. You are now a child of God. So don't walk like the rest of the world. You with me so far? You follow that? And he describes the world in verses 18 and 19. He says their understanding is darkened. They do not have the life of God. They are ignorant of the life of God. Their heart is blinded. In verse 19, they are past feeling. They're living in a way they shouldn't live. They run after greediness. They're unclean. And look at verse 20. But you've not so learned Christ. Here's God's plan for your life. You're a Christian. Don't live the way the world lives. Don't handle your problems the way the world handles theirs. Do you see where I'm headed here? Do you follow this? And he says in verse 22, here's what you need to do. Put off the former conversation, the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Now watch this, okay? Watch this. You got to put off the old man. Don't live the way the old man wants to live. Make sure your thinking is right. Be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and put on the new man. Verse 24, put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. Now notice what he does here. Okay, look at some verses really fast, okay? So let's move. Look at verse 25. Put away lying and speak truth, every man with his neighbor. Verse 26. Be ye angry, but sin not. How many of y'all have emotions? Do you? How many of y'all have emotions? Aren't you thankful for emotions? Emotions are great, aren't they? Are you in love? Has it been a good retreat? Are you like, oh my goodness, you're just beautiful? Have you written cool, great little things in that love letter? Emotions are wonderful. So here's what Paul is writing. You have emotions, but don't allow your emotions to cause you to sin. Be ye angry and sin not. Yeah, conflict comes. You're going to be upset. You're going to get bothered, but you don't sin in that. Can you see what he's addressing here? He said, don't sin. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. In other words, you don't get mad and stay mad. You don't get angry and stay angry. No, you deal with it right away. You've got to resolve it. You've got to take care of it. And he says, before the sun goes down. There's a comedian here in the USA named Phyllis Diller. She's old. And she used to say in her comedy routines, she would say, why go to bed angry when you can stay up and fight? Well, that might be okay comedy, but that is lousy Christianity. Y'all understand that? No, you don't stay up and fight. You make it right. You don't fight. You make it right. I've got all these rhymes going on tonight. This is good. Have you noticed that? Stay the course and find the source and don't fight. Make it right. This is good, isn't it? Come on, are y'all impressed? Yes. This is good. All right, good. Okay, so now notice what he's saying here. You got to deal with your emotions. Don't let your emotions damage your Christianity. Look at verse 29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. What's he talking about there? The conflicts in our life, the way we respond to things, no corruption, instead edification, and I minister grace. Look at verse 31. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice, and be ye kind one to another. Watch this. Tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Do you see conflict resolution all over this? We're not to be dishonest with each other. We're to be open and honest. We're not to let our emotions cause us to sin. No. My emotions are to be controlled by the Spirit of God. We're not to allow our communication with each other. Let me try that again. We're not to allow our communication with each other to be corrupt. We're to edify each other, and we're to minister grace. You got that picture of the word minister means to serve. It's like in the meal tonight. In the meal tonight, she came by and served us dessert. Did y'all see that picture? What do you do when your spouse is not correct? You serve grace. You see what he's meaning? You minister grace. You offer grace to them. You don't get mad. You don't get defensive. You don't get angry. You minister grace. And notice what he's saying. You do that with your words. So sometimes Beth and I may have a disagreement, and sometimes it can be solved as easily as this. You don't even have to argue about it. You just say, well, I know we're not seeing eye to eye, but I love you and I always will. See, I'm ministering grace. Or when Bethley ministers grace, maybe my words were sharp or I responded incorrectly, but she ministers grace and forgives. Then the conflict is over. Some conflicts require more in-depth effort to overcome them. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So let's start. Nobody here but us, okay? Now I know you've had a long day and a long conference, but I want you to talk a little bit because that'll get you awake, all right? So y'all wake up. Do we need to stand or do we need to sing my favorite children's song? If you look sleepy, we will sing. If you're happy and you know it, slap your neighbor. All right, so don't make me sing that, okay? So wake up here and let's talk about the source. How do you win at marital conflicts? You begin by considering the source of our conflicts. Now I have 9, but before I give them to you, I want you to think. Why do we have conflicts in a marriage? Every marriage does. Let me tell you, just up front here, the goal is never to avoid conflict. The goal is to always handle conflicts in a healthy way. It's not that we're going to avoid them. They are coming. You will have them. What you have to learn is how to handle them in a healthy way. All right? So where do they come from? What would you say? Why do married people sometimes have conflicts? Give me some answers. All right? Who'll go first? Why? Because we're different. And because we're sinners. And because we're full of pride. We're stubborn? No, never stubborn, right? Stubborn, pride. Why else? Why do we have conflicts? We have expectations, and the idea of that is the expectations not being met. That's a big one. That happens.
Selfish.
What is it?
Selfish.
We're selfish. We certainly are. Very self-aware. How dare you say that to me? How dare you treat me like that? That's all selfishness. Can you think of others? Why do we have conflict?
Relationship with God is not good.
Because sometimes our relationship with God is not right. Because did you notice that what Paul says is, I start with my relationship with God. Put off the old man, put on the new man, and then I deal with the conflicts. Did you notice the order he gave us there in this Ephesians chapter 4? It's a really good point. Is there anything else you'd think of? Here's why we have conflicts. I've got 9, but I want to hear yours first. Anybody else?
You're hungry.
Because you're hungry. Well, not here, you're not. So there should be no conflicts here over that. Because if you're hungry here, that's your fault. Because there's food available there, and everywhere. There's just food. But yes, when you're hungry, when you're just normal things of life. So we can add to that when you're tired. When you're hungry, when you're tired, these produce conflicts in our life. Can you think of anything else? I'm just curious. You forget something. Can you elaborate on that? I'm curious what you're meaning by that. I agree with you, but I'm just curious if there's a story. Okay. So we forgot something and it, things get busy, and that's a good point. Nobody's ever said that one. That's why I wanted to hear that one. That's a good point. Technology can cause conflicts. Children can cause conflicts. Absolutely. So get rid of them. Just kidding. Don't get rid of your kids. But that's true. Children can cause conflicts in a marriage. Misunderstandings can cause conflicts. You guys are good. So you can obviously see there's a lot of sources. So here's the 9 I wrote down. All right, let's just go through them quickly. Number 1, we're both sinners. Now we've already said that, but write that down because that's at the top of the list. We are both sinners. Don't be shocked if your spouse does something wrong. You are the one who married a sinner. And you had no choice, because if you're going to get married, you're going to marry a sinner. So don't be upset about that. You can expect it, see, because you're married to a sinner. So you expect conflict. That's going to happen. Number 2, we allow things to, write this word down, escalate. Escalate. We allow things to get bigger and bigger. E-S-C-A-L-A-T-E. E-S-C-A-L-A-T-E. They escalate. Like an escalator at the airport. You step on the bottom at the airport, you step on, and it goes, and it takes you to the top and dumps you off at the top. Here's what happens. Sometimes we get on an escalator with our emotions or with our problem. And it's a tiny little thing because we're at the bottom. And we get on there and it just gets bigger and it gets bigger. And we're busy and we can't solve it and we get angry and she gets angry and I get angry and she raises her voice and I raise my voice and she gets defensive and I get defensive. And the next thing you know, this little problem is bigger than you expected it to be. Someone said, when I argue with my wife, she gets historical. And the guy said, don't you mean hysterical? And he said, no, historical, because she remembers everything I ever did wrong for all of my history. Well, there's some humor to that, perhaps, but have you seen how that can escalate? And so the next thing you know, you bring up something and your wife brings up something or your husband brings up something. We allow things to escalate. That causes conflict. Number 3, we are triggered by life's events. We allow events to trigger negative responses. We are triggered by life's events. Like, here's a good way to think about that. Some of you ladies, you're married to a man who is not like your father. He's not like your daddy. Your daddy never did that. Your daddy would never have responded that way. Your dad never, ever did that. So your husband does something, and because you're comparing it to your father, it triggers you. And the next thing you know, inside, it's like, why does he do that? My dad never did that. Or why does she do that? My mother was never that way. And so that event triggers a negative response in you. You got to be aware of that. That's a source of conflict. Number 4, we have some hidden issues. Our brother back here said, we have expectations that haven't been discussed and settled. Listen to me. Listen to me. If you have an expectation and your spouse doesn't know it, you cannot hold them responsible to meet the expectation that they don't know. Is that fair? So if you have an expectation, then you have to communicate that. But we usually don't do that. Sometimes we just feel awkward about communicating our expectations, so we don't. Number 5, we are often guilty of misinterpretation. We erroneously interpret various situations. Remember that story I gave last night about the driving? Why are you driving so recklessly? You never care about you just don't care about our family? Well, how did you get that out of that? He's just in a hurry. Or maybe she's just a little distracted in her driving. And so when you misinterpret that, you're going to have conflicts, okay? Number 6, we have needs that are not being met. We have needs that are not being met. Sometimes a man, ladies, sometimes your husband needs encouragement because he's weary or he's discouraged about something. Have you picked up on this, ladies? Most men never talk about what's bothering them. Have you ladies figured that out yet? Why? They don't talk about it because they're a male. And if they talk, because they're not a woman. God designs you women. You talk. Have you ever seen 2 ladies talking at a restaurant? 2 ladies talking at a restaurant are very different than 2 men talking at a restaurant. Have you noticed that, Pastor? 2 men talking to each other at a restaurant, and they're like, yeah, I know. Women are like, really? No. And they mirror each other. See, we're different. And because of that, we can have these needs. Ladies, your husband may be discouraged and need encouragement. Guys, your wife may be discouraged and need encouragement. So she has a need that's not being met, and that ends up resulting in conflict. Number 7, we battle with displaced anger. This is a huge problem in a lot of lives. Now, brothers, can I just suggest something to you men? Anger seems to be especially a problem for men. Men frequently, and it may be, you asked why on a moment ago, it may be that men battle anger because they don't talk about their emotions. We do hold them inside. And sometimes without even realizing it, we're troubled inside and we respond to things because of what's inside. And ladies, men aren't the only one that battles anger. And you know there's a variety of anger types, right? Did you know that? There's anger that is explosive. How many of y'all know somebody when they get mad, they punch walls? You know anybody like that? You know anybody that gets angry and when they get angry, they get quiet? And it's a silent anger, but they're still angry. They just get really quiet. I probably tend to be that way because my children will say, if Daddy gets really quiet, something's wrong. So I tend to respond. Now my grandmother, Granny Young, we called her. Granny Young was opposite of me. When she got angry, everybody knew it. My aunt knew it because when I was a little boy, my grandmother got angry at my Aunt Marcia, and she pulled out a pistol and shot at her 3 times. My grandmother went to jail for shooting at my aunt. That's the truth. That's a true story. Aren't y'all glad I'm saved and not like my grandmother? She shot at her daughter-in-law. That's what you call conflict. Are you with me on that? That's a little extreme, isn't it? That was my grandmother. My grandmother never spoke to my wife, ever. You know why? Because my wife is a Yankee. She's from the north. My grandmother was from the south, and my grandmother did not like people from the north. She never, ever talked to my wife, ever. Is that not true? We went over to see my grandmother, and my grandmother, Granny, would not talk to my wife. She looked at me and she said, does she want something to drink? So let me ask her, do you want something to drink? Yes, ma'am, she'll take something to drink. Is that not weird? That is just wrong, isn't it? But see, my grandmother's anger was explosive. She got angry, she shot at somebody with a gun. My dad was angry. When my dad got angry, he would punch things. When my dad got angry, he would cuss. The only time I've ever heard my dad cuss was because he lost his temper. See, these issues of anger are problematic in any relationship. They always will be. If you and I do not confess our anger and allow the Spirit of God to give us victory over anger, we will fail every time when it comes to conflict. Anger is a terrible way to handle conflict. So this is a source. You follow where we're going with this? Do I have 2 more? Yes. We have varying, this is a big one. Write this down. Personalities. One of the reasons we have conflicts is we have varying personalities. Your personality may not be her personality, and likely isn't. It's very rare for 2 people to get married and have identical personalities. You will often have a very loud spouse and a quiet spouse. You will have a really happy spouse and a very solemn spouse. You will have one spouse that is maybe a little more funny and one that's a little more serious. We have varying personalities. And really isn't it amazing that what brings us together in a dating relationship becomes a source of irritation once we're married? Because I meet couples all the time, and she's like, oh my goodness, he is so funny. He is so funny. He's just hilarious. He makes me laugh all the time. And then they go to an altar, I do, and I promise, and yes, I promise too. And then all of a sudden she's like, the guy drives me crazy. He's just always trying to make me laugh. Well, it's amazing how the varying personalities all of a sudden result in marriage conflict. You know why? Because the enemy is doing everything he can to damage your marriage. And this is the source. Number 9 is a big one. Number 9 is a big one. Number 9 is a big one. We have dramatically different family backgrounds. This is a source of conflict in a lot of marriages. Did you know that God's plan is that when you get married, a husband and a wife comes together. Here's the husband's family. Here's the wife's family. The wife's family affects the marriage. The husband's family affects the marriage. Here's what the Bible says. For this cause, a man leaves father and mother cleaves to his wife, and they are now one flesh. We could literally say they are now a brand new entity. So that, yes, Bethley's family approved of our marriage. My family approved of our marriage. So Bethany and I got married, and our families are very different. Very. My dad's a farmer. Her dad's a pastor. We lived in Tennessee. Her family lived in Ohio. My family are a little more country, redneck. Her family would be a little more what we might say city folk. My family is quiet. Now you probably find that hard to believe because of me, but that's true, isn't it? My family's very quiet. We don't say I love you. We don't talk like that, except on special occasions. We say I love you on special occasions, like when you're born, you get married, you die, okay? Special occasions. Bethley's family says I love you for no reason. They say it all the time. Her mother would say I love you all the time to me. Her dad would hug me and tell me he called me. Well, I love you, son. My family's, if I say, hey, Dad, I love you. All right. See, that's my dad. My dad doesn't even get out of the chair when I go to see him. I almost never go see him because of the way I travel, but I will go to see my dad, and my dad just sits there. Come on in. Bethley's family, we go to see her family, and they'd be like, wah! And they give you big hugs, and they kiss you on the cheek. Whoa! And our families are so different. My family is different than Bethley's family in the sense that when it comes to desserts, Bethley's family makes them homemade. You don't buy them at Costco. You don't go to the store. You make the apple pie. You make it homemade. My family buys these pies by this lady named Sarah Lee. They're in a box, okay? We were first married. We went to my parents' home for Thanksgiving, okay? For Thanksgiving. My new wife made a beautiful homemade apple pie. And you know what happened? My mom and family didn't like it. And it was obvious, wasn't it? They were like, that's not like Sarah Lee. Did you know that's a problem? Did you know that's a problem? That's a problem to my wife. That's not a problem in our marriage. Do you see this? And here's the whole point. You have different families. You say, well, we're all Slavic, so we're all alike. No, you're not. No, we're all different. The way your family did it, and the way her family did it, the way your family did it, and the way his family did it are very different. And you're going to have conflict from that. God's plan, by the way, is that in a marriage, you bring the best of both families into one new family. The best of both. And it's not, don't ever expect, well, we're going to do it exactly the way my family did it. Wait a minute. You leave and cleave. You leave your family for the sake of a new family. And so we do things uniquely. Like I was raised, do y'all know what cornbread is? You guys familiar with that? Okay. So cornbread, big southern thing. My family made cornbread differently than my wife's family. I always ate cornbread with no sugar in it. Cornbread did not have sugar in it. Bethley's family, they called it Johnny cake. That's what they called it because it was more like a cake than cornbread. It had to have sugar in it. Well, see, here's the deal. I could spend the rest of my life, every time my wife makes cornbread, go on, well, my goodness, my mama didn't make it this way, for crying out loud. That'd be a real problem in a marriage, wouldn't it? But the deal is, my wife likes it with sugar, and unfortunately, my children do too. So I'm the odd man out there. So my wife makes it with sugar. See, it's okay. See, we got that from her family. Do you see how we bring the best together and we come in together and we don't allow these things to be the conflict of where we're always fussing and fighting and bothered and on edge. That's the source. Okay, you got the source? Okay, so now we got to move to point 2. Once we know the source, we have to determine the cores individually. The 2 words in parentheses are the primary things I want you to get under number 2. What is God's plan for handling conflict? Live Christianity. Can I say that again? I want to make sure all of you understand this. God's plan for our handling of conflict is that we live Christianity. When we are failing in a marriage, we fail because we are not living Christianity. Because look in the text. You still got your Bible open? Because here's what he says. Here's what he says in the text. You got to put on the new man. Well, what does that look like? Well, put away lying. We're to be open and honest with each other. In other words, right there on your number one, refuse to be dishonest. Refuse to be dishonest. Guys, look. Girls, look. We have this tendency to be dishonest without even thinking about it. Has your spouse ever said this to you? Hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? And you said this? I'm fine. You ever said that? Has that ever happened to you? Are you okay? I'm fine. You just lied. Because you're not fine. You're upset. Do you see how easy it is to be dishonest? We got to refuse to be dishonest. Now, you don't have to be brutal about it. Do y'all know the name Billy Graham? Yeah. You don't have to be brutal in your honesty. Someone asked Billy Graham's wife years ago, they said, Mrs. Graham, did you ever think about divorce? And she said, no, I thought about murder a couple of times. Now, that maybe is a little brutal in the honesty section, right? And that's not what I'm talking about here. It's not that I'm going to be honest and I unload. It's not the idea. Honesty is not the idea. Let me tell you what's wrong with you. Let me be honest about this. You're a jerk. Okay, that's not going to work. But the idea about it is I'm going to be honest about what I'm feeling and what I believe the problem is. Refuse to be dishonest. That's living Christianity. Y'all follow that? You've got to apply biblical Christianity to your marriage. And here's what he says here. Refuse dishonesty. There it is. Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor. Be honest about what's bothering you. You don't be brutal. Don't be angry. Don't be mean. But it's good to say, I am upset when you do this. I have a hard time when you do that. The reason that I struggle with that. But see, we're honest and open with each other about the source of the conflict. You've got to be honest. All right. Number two, learn to edify. He says right here in the text, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying. Do you remember the point he's making? Put off the old man, put on the new man. Remember that point? So put off corrupt communication and put on edification. Do you see that? So what is corrupt communication? Paul says, put off corrupt communication and put on edification. So what is corrupt communication in the text? What do you think it is? What do you suppose he's referring to when he says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but instead edify? So what would the corrupt communication be? Any ideas? Dishonesty. Okay, dishonesty would be corrupt. That's true because of verse 25. What else? Okay, lying. We got the lying, the dishonesty one. We got that one. You got any others? Okay, over-exaggerating. But literally, just literally think about it like this. Literally. Here's the two sides. God says, you want to win? You've got to put off the old man. Corrupt communication. You've got to put on the new man. Edification. Edification is what? To build up. To strengthen, to encourage. You got edification? Edification is to build up, to strengthen, to encourage. So what would corrupt communication be? To discourage. To tear down. Do you see how that works? That's what, he's not talking about cussing here. Now, how many of y'all agree that cussing is wrong? We don't need to, but that's not what he's talking about here. Because he's talking about the opposite of edification. You know what we do when we get angry? Conflicts come to our marriage? We tear down. What is wrong with you? We can be so harsh when there's conflicts. You're such an idiot. Why do you act that way? What is wrong with you? You're such a jerk. What are we doing? Corrupt communication. See, we're tearing down. We're discouraging. Do y'all follow this? The opposite of it is I build you up. You say, but how do you build somebody up when you're mad at them? It's a valid question, isn't it? How do you build somebody up when you're mad at them? Well, you live Christianity.
Please elaborate.
I can. The Bible says this in Philippians chapter 4. The Bible says in Philippians chapter 4, finally, my brethren, whatsoever things are true, honest, just, lovely, pure, and of a good report, think on these things. Okay, so you're mad at your spouse. Your spouse is being a jerk. Okay? But what's the truth? The truth is, you love her. The truth is, you love him. The truth is, you made a promise to God that you would be married for better or for worse. Would you say that conflict is better or worse? Do you see why you know why you have vows in a marriage? Do you know why? Because vows are for the worst times. You never need vows in the better times. Like, my husband just made $1 million. I think I will leave him. Well, no, you don't leave in that kind of time when everything's well. The struggle comes when things aren't well. So, brothers and sisters, you've got to edify. And what you do is you remember the truth. Even in the midst, there have been many times in our marriage where we have a disagreement that we haven't been able to solve. I have my view, she has her view, I share my view, she shares her view, she doesn't see my view, I don't see her view, and we got a problem. So you know what we've learned to do? To say a couple of things. Hey, I know we can't solve this, but here's the deal. I love you, and nothing's ever going to change that. You're the most important person in my life, even though I am so mad right now I can hardly see straight. See, it's not that the conflict is gone. It's that in the midst of the conflict, we remember the truth. And what is the truth? I love you. I love you. I know you don't hate me. I know that something's causing us to have a conflict here. We're too busy, or I'm tired, or I'm working late, or I'm feeling pressured about the finances, or we got to go see your mother this weekend, or whatever. But the deal is, you come back and you build. You got to learn to encourage each other even in the conflict. Sometimes when my wife is really mad at me, when my wife is really upset about something, her blue eyes get brighter. They're like, whoosh. And I just find it very attractive. And so I'm like, wow, when you're angry, your blue eyes are so beautiful. I could just dive in those and swim forever. That's a good line. Write that down. I could dive in those eyes and swim forever. Now, if her eyes are brown, you better change the color, or you'll meet Jesus. You understand this? But here's the point. See, in the middle of it, you can still edify. You don't have to have a knockdown, drag-out fight. You've got a conflict. Edify each other in the middle of it. It's okay to say, yeah, I'm upset, but we can't solve it, so let's schedule it. Let's talk about it tomorrow, because I'm still in love with you, and nothing will ever change that, and I will always be in love with you, and I'm not going anywhere, and I wish we could solve it tonight, but obviously we can't. Let's just go to bed. Let's go to sleep. Let's schedule a time tomorrow where we come back and see if we can. Sometimes we've ended it like this. We've just been able to say, you know what? Obviously we can't solve this. So, I love you. Do you love me? I love you. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Yeah, I forgive you. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me too? Yes, I forgive you. Great. Now let's make out. Okay, sorry about that. I just shouldn't have thrown that in there. But it's the point, isn't it? The best part of fighting is the making up. Are you with me on this or not? Y'all look a little uneasy there. But it's the truth. See, you're edifying. That's the whole point of this passage, is that you don't allow the corrupt communication. You don't tear down, you edify. And I've already touched on it. You minister grace. That's number 3. You treat them the same way you want to be treated when you're wrong. What do you want when you're wrong? You want somebody to understand you, to love you, to tell you that it's okay, to assure you that I'm not going anywhere. That's what you want. So the point is, give to your spouse what you want to get from your spouse. You minister grace. Number 4, you practice kindness. Now this is so simple, it's almost awkward to preach about. Be ye kind one to another. Be kind one to another. Isn't that simple? What do you do when you have a problem in your marriage? Practice kindness. You got to be kind. Treat your spouse kindly. You wouldn't ridicule a perfect stranger. Don't ridicule your spouse. Shame on you if you're unkind to the number one person in your life, your spouse. You wouldn't let your kids talk like that to each other. You would probably spank your child if they talk to their siblings unkindly, but we excuse it in our marriage. You see how the Bible's laying out for us a method here, a course for living Christianity in our marriage? I wish I could just give you, this is how you handle conflict. 1, 2, 3, do these 3 steps. But what the Bible says, here's how you handle conflict. You've got to live the Bible. You've got to take the Word of God and apply it to your life and obey the Bible, because the Bible tells you how to live your life, and as you're obeying the Bible and applying the Bible to your life, you can live Christianity and find victory over conflicts in your marriage. You've got to practice kindness. Number 5, embrace, a big word here, forgiveness. Your pastor this morning dealt with this word, so I'm not going to park on it a long time, but review his notes. Forgiveness doesn't say, okay, nothing is wrong. Forgiveness doesn't even necessarily correct a wrong. What forgiveness does is say, yes, I'm upset about what happened because you wronged me, but I'm not holding it against you. I'm letting it go. That was wrong. What you said was wrong. The way you talked to me was wrong. What you did to me was wrong, but I forgive you. I let it go. See, forgiveness is necessary when we feel like a person owes me for what they did. Can't believe you said that. You owe me. You got to make that right. You said that to me, and that was wrong, and you hurt me, and you owe me. You owe me. The problem is, here's the problem with that. You can't make it right. Because you can't go back and undo what was said, right? You can't always, now you can apologize. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I don't know what I was thinking. I should not. I'm so sorry. But see, it still happened. And you still feel it. So forgiveness says, that happened, and that was wrong, and it hurt me. But I let it go. I'm not holding it against you. I'm going to let it go. Isn't that what Jesus Christ did for us? He's the illustration in the text. We owed a debt we could not pay, and He paid a debt He did not owe. And when I come to Jesus Christ by faith, He takes away my sins. He forgives me for my sins. He pays for them so that I don't have to. Brothers and sisters, you've got to learn forgiveness. You say, but he didn't ask for forgiveness. Don't wait. Forgive him before he asks. When I do weddings, I give a little list of things at weddings in a message I do at weddings. And one of the things I say to married people is, may your forgiveness be swift. When there's a wrong in your life, somebody does you wrong, forgive them. Just do it right away. Say, but they didn't ask. They didn't apologize. I didn't get a chance to tell them what they did wrong. You don't have to. Just let it go. So he got up and he was grouchy. Do y'all know that word, grouchy? I saw a bumper sticker that said, sometimes I wake up grouchy. And then it said, and sometimes I let him sleep in. Well, maybe you're married to that hymn. I saw one bumper sticker that said, all men are idiots, and I married their king. Now I thought, well, wouldn't that be a great marriage? Don't you think that's a great marriage? Love to meet that couple, wouldn't you? See, don't think that way. You married your best friend, didn't you? Amen. Didn't you get married to your best friend? I don't know. How do they do it in Slavic weddings? Do they make you get married? You're marrying this person. If you don't, we're going to put you in jail. Or do you choose marriage? Do you get to choose? You don't choose, don't you? So see, nobody made you get married. You married the person you wanted to marry. Did all of you do that? Did all of you marry the person you... Now go back to your wedding day. Did you get married on your wedding day because you wanted to marry them? Sure you did. All right? Don't forget that. See, don't let that go away. You're married to the person you love. And Pastor was so right today. Well, I don't feel it anymore. Stop with that. A guy comes and says, well, I don't think I love my wife anymore. You know what I tell him to do? Repent. Because you're not right with God. You don't have a choice. God commands you to love your wife, so love her. Love him. You got to say, Lord, I'm sorry. I've gotten so busy, I don't love my wife anymore. I've gotten so busy, I don't admire him and respect him anymore. We've let little things get bigger in our marriage, and we're not right. You've got to live Christianity if you are going to overcome conflicts in your marriage. Am I making sense or not? You just live Christianity. Kindness is Christianity. Honesty is Christianity. Edifying is Christianity. Are y'all good at that? Are you good at edifying? Do you build each other? Guys, do you ever tell her she's an amazing mother? You're such a wonderful mom. You're such a wonderful cook. I'm a bigger man for it. Do you ever build her? Do you ever say, wow, I'm so impressed the way you take care of our children? Ladies, when's the last time you said to him, you know what? You're a hard worker, and I'm impressed by that. I'm a lucky woman to be married to a man like you. When's the last time you said that to your spouse? I just want you to know that I think you're the most beautiful lady I have ever met. When you walk into a room, my heart goes, wow, that's the woman of my dreams. Do you say stuff like that to each other? So you build up. Don't forget that. That's just living Christianity. Am I making sense or not? Are y'all with me so far? All right, so you got to think about the source. Then you got to think about the course. And look on the top of page 15. Oh, follow love. Follow love. Because, thank you for that. Follow love. Don't ever stop loving. Do you say it to each other? Every day. Say it. I love you. Say it when you go to work. I love you. Say it when you go to bed. I love you. Say it when a meal is over. I love you. I taught our children, after we would have a meal at our table, my children had to say, may I be excused, before they left the table. And then they had to say, thank you, Mommy, for the meal, and I love you. We had to say that in our family. Thank you for the meal, and I love you. And it was a very special thing. Our children learned gratitude. They learned to show respect to their mother. And it was something beautiful in our home. My Joshua, remember we told you about Joshua, the one that was always so honest? Joshua just what's up here, he just says it. That's how he is. Like he was eating at West Coast Baptist College with a group of college girls. He was in college, he's in with a group of college girls, and there was a girl across from him, and she was saying, I just feel like I'm gaining all this weight, and I don't like gaining all this weight, and I want to lose weight. And then she picks up like a dessert, and she starts eating it, and my son says, that's why you're gaining weight. And she was upset. And she was like, how dare you? And he was like, well, it's true. See, that's my son Joshua. And so he just thinks things and gets in trouble for it. He just says it. He shouldn't have said that. He just says it. And so my son Joshua, we were eating at a pastor's home, and we were having Sunday dinner at a pastor's home around the table. And the kids, they're smaller. And so I said to the pastor's wife, I said, is it okay if I let the children get down and just play here in the living room beside the kitchen? Oh, she said, that would be wonderful. In fact, I got some toys for my grandkids. They can play with the grandkids' toys. And so she got, and so I said, Joshua, what do you say to pastor's wife? Because what he's supposed to say is, thank you for the meal. But what he said to her was, thank you for the meal, and I love you. And she was like, oh my goodness, that was just so beautiful. Well, do you see how that's just living Christianity? Don't miss that in your life. See, that's love. We got to show that. Make your marriage something really sweet. If you do that, it makes the conflict times easier. Keep it sweet. How sweet are you in your marriage? Are you following love? Look at the top of that verse here. 1 Corinthians 14. Pastor was in 1 Corinthians 13 about the love chapter. Y'all familiar with this? Pastor's already been there today. The next chapter says, follow the way of love and eagerly desire gifts of the Spirit, especially prophecy. The word follow means to pursue love. It's to vigorously follow or to chase after. It's not just like, all right, fine, I love you. No, it's to vigorously do it. Hey, I'm all in. That's the idea of the Greek word. And so this is a little thing here for you to look through at the top of page 15. Pursue compliments and not criticism. Get really good at complimenting. What's the best compliment you've received today from your spouse? Have you received any compliment at all today from your spouse? You want to share? You want to share the compliment? Anybody got a compliment you want to share with the audience? This is what compliment I received today. Anybody want to share one? I love you. That was a compliment? Well, I was looking for a little more. Oh, well, I love you too. Thank you. Thank you. I feel loved. Bring it on. Do you know what I mean by compliments? You're beautiful. Thank you for that. That was wonderful. You're amazing. Thank you for, and we try to compliment over little things. We even taught our children to compliment each other, to say thank you and to build each other up. It's important. Number 2, pursue sacrifice, not selfishness. Give. Listen, if she's had a hard day, you help with the children more, even if you're tired. Sacrifice for each other. Pursue sweetness, not sarcasm. Pursue edification, not negativity. Pursue victory over little things. Remember the Song of Solomon? He says to beware of the little foxes that spoil the vine. Little things make a big difference. Don't let little things destroy your marriage. Take care of little things. Handle the little things. Don't let them get big, okay? Number 3, page 15. Determine the steps we need to take. Okay, now I have 5 statements for you here. And do y'all understand this idea of nail the first word? Y'all got that idea? Okay, nail the first word. So we have 5 words. Nail the first word, nail the swift word, nail the right word, nail the together word, and nail the last word. This is how you overcome conflict. Here's the first word. It's in your notes. Write it down. Pray. First word, pray. Do you ever do that? Do you ever get your feelings hurt and pray about it? Do you ever have an issue in your marriage and go to God and say, God, I'm really upset right now. Have you read the Psalms? David does this a lot. David says, God, I am so mad right now I could kill all my enemies. In fact, God, I want you to kill all my enemies. That's a little raw. That's a little out there, don't you think? David said stuff like that. I'm so mad, God, kill my enemies. It's like, simmer down, Dave. Pull it back there, buddy. But what's David doing? He's praying. He's talking to God about what's going on the inside. Do you ever talk to God like that? Guys, when you get upset, maybe it's time to go to the basement and kneel. Go to your office, go to your garage, go to your out barn, and get on your knees. I read in the Bible, James chapter 1, if any man lacks wisdom. It's a Bible way of saying when you don't know what to do. If any man, don't you think that's kind of funny? He says, if, just in case there's a time in your life you don't know what to do, maybe. Just in case, maybe there's a time when you don't know what to do, pray about it. If any man lacks wisdom, ask of God. Ladies, you got a conflict in your marriage, you know what to do about it? Have you prayed about it? It's the first word. You don't blow up, that's not your first word. You don't go to bed angry, that's not your first word. Your first word is, God, help. You pray. The first word is pray. We good on that one? Second word, here's the number 2 is the swift word. Swift to hear. Swift to hear. That comes from James chapter 1. Let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak. So circle the word pray, that's the first word. Circle the word hear, that's the second word. Circle that word hear. You got to listen. Here's a good way to handle conflict. Listen. Listen. How many of y'all do this? Okay, nobody here but us. Okay, we're just us, okay? How many of you, when you have a conflict in your marriage, she starts explaining what she's upset about, and you jump in? No. That's not what I said. That's not what I did. You're not right there. Yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but you did that. You jump in. Do you do that? Do you do that to each other? Yeah, but and next thing you know, no, you said, no, you said, no, you said, no, you said. And the escalation begins. You follow this? Here's the second word. Here's the swift word. Be swift to hear. Sweetheart, what's wrong? And you listen. That's so hard, isn't it? Because by nature, what do we want to do? Defend. Explain. Convince her that I'm right and she's wrong, or convince him that you're right and he's wrong. Here's what the Bible says. You got to pray about it and listen. Think of the drive-thru. Do you ever go through a drive-thru? You go through a drive-thru and the voice says, hello, may I take your order? I will have 2 tacos with lettuce and tomatoes and onions and a Diet Coke. And the voice says, you will have 3 tacos with lettuce, tomatoes, and a Coke. No, I'm sorry. I will have 3 tacos, lettuce, tomato, onions, and a medium Diet Coke. And the voice says, oh, you'll have 3 tacos, lettuce, tomato, onions, and a medium Diet Coke. That's what I want. What you're doing is you're listening to each other. You can even see this person, but you speak, they listen. You listen, they speak. You got to get good at that in your marriage. Be quiet and listen. Listening by sin nature is to defend. We listen to defend. We listen to explain. We listen to find out why you're wrong. But listening in the Bible is to understand you. Ladies, do you listen to him to understand or just to figure out why he's wrong? Guys, do you listen to her to understand her or just to figure out why you're right? You listen to understand. Guys, can I tell you something I'm trying to learn? I've been trying to learn this for 31 years. But this is so true. Perception is valid. Because my wife oftentimes is upset about something that I did not mean, did not say, did not feel, was not even on my radar, but she's upset about it. And that used to really bother me. And I'd be like, well, wait a minute, I know I didn't say that. That is not what I meant. That is not what I said. That is not what happened. What is wrong with you? And I'm trying to learn that perception is valid. So what I have to learn to say is, oh my goodness, you felt that? Now, brothers, are you with me on this? As a man, I'm like, this is really hard for me to say. She's upset because she felt it. It's not what happened, but she felt that's what happened. She felt that way. And so I've had to learn to say something like this. I'm sorry I made you feel that way. That's not even what happened in my thinking, but that's how she responded. I'm sorry I made you feel that way. If you'll get this will help you. Are y'all getting this? Yes. I'm sorry I made you feel that way. We had some disagreement. I don't know how long ago it's been now, but Beth and I were getting ready to speak at a conference like this, and I had my notes on my desk in my bedroom, and on my notes I had written it out to the men. Men, this is what you say. I'm sorry I made you feel that way. Will you forgive me for making you feel that way? I wrote it out. And then we had this little disagreement. She was wrong about something, and that was a joke. And we had this little disagreement, and we just weren't getting it solved. We just weren't getting it solved. And so, unbeknownst to me, my wife was in the bedroom, working, and she saw my notes on the desk. And my wife got my pen, and she circled that part of my notes. And she put a sticky note on there, and it said this, with an arrow. And she was right. I thought it was unfair, but she was still right. And you've got to learn. See, the thing about it is, learn the perception, brothers. If she's upset about it, don't defend it because that won't solve the problem. Work at acknowledging the perception. And it only took me like 4 hours this week to get that right. So we finally got that one solved. All right, number 3, nail the right word. And here's the right word: stay focused. Focused on the issue at hand. The first word is what? Pray. What is the swift word? Listen. What is the right word? Focused. In other words, don't bring up the past. I think Pastor alluded to that this morning, didn't he? Don't bring up the past. Don't bring up history. If that's been taken care of, leave it out there in the past. Always stay focused on the issue at hand. Number 4, nail the together word. Nail the together word. Okay? The together word is this word, we. In fact, to make it rhyme, put a cross through the word I there. Put we, not I. Cross out I and put we, not me. Since I'm rhyming tonight, all right? Stay the course. Stay the course. And know the source. And what was the other one there I came up with? What was it?
We, not me.
Okay, this one's we, not me. What was the other one? All right, don't fight, make it right. Now we got we, not me. We're on a roll here tonight, all right? We, not me. In other words, the disagreement in your marriage is not about you, it's about us. Don't ever fight from the position of this is mine. How dare you affect me this way? Always fight from the we. We're together. We're one in this. My son Matthew sent me a text recently, and they've had a very busy summer. They've had 3 full weeks in a row. A summer camp, a local vacation Bible school where my son did all the preaching at another church, and then a vacation Bible school at their own church. And they've got a newborn baby that's not yet sleeping through the night. They're tired. They're busy. On top of that, my son has a second job that he works, and he's full-time at the church, but he also has another job. So he's texted me recently, and he said something about, and he used his wife's name. He said, she's just really discouraged and really down, and it's kind of frustrating. What do I do about it? That's what he said to me. And I said to him these words: don't think in terms of her. She's this way. I'm this way. Remember the we. We're in this together. If she's upset, you're upset. If she's bothered about something, you're bothered about it. Because it's we, not me. Y'all follow that one? Any question about that one? Okay. Then here's one last thing. Nail the last word. What do you suppose the last word in an argument is? What is it?
I love you.
I love you. Okay, now that's not wrong.
Sorry.
Okay, we're on that one. That's the last word I'm looking for. We got to say I love you, so I'm going to get to that one. But in the order here, the last word is apologize. And apologize always has a sister word. What is the sister word of apologize? Do you know? Forgive. So the last word is actually 2 words. Apologize, forgive. How do you apologize? How do you apologize? Look at me. Here's how you apologize. You say, sweetheart, I was wrong. I am sorry. Will you forgive me? That's an apology. And here's what you say. I forgive you. And then what do? Say I love you. You kiss. You hug. All is well. You got to know the first word. You got to know the swift word. You got to know you got to know the right word. You got to know the together word, and you've got to know the last word. And brothers and sisters, if you'll learn to apply this to your life, conflicts will come, but you can learn how to handle them in a healthy way. And when you learn how to handle them in a healthy way, you know what it does? It makes you closer. It makes your marriage sweeter, because even the problems can strengthen your marriage when you handle them in the right way. And the last line is very important. Always be willing to get help when you need it. Now look at me, because I want to talk to you about this. Always be willing to get help when you need it. I want to talk to you about this. For some reason, in our culture, we keep our problems private. We keep our problems private. But if your marriage is struggling, it is a foolish thing to keep it private when you can get help. And here's what we tend to do. We tend to have problems come to a marriage and we keep it private and we ignore it. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it's big, we go to pastor for help. And pastor, I don't know how you are, but one of the frustrating things in our marriage counseling is that a lot of times when people come to us for help, it is so big that it's going to take a long time to correct it. Don't wait till that long. Don't wait till your problem is so big that it's going to take months to unravel the hurt feelings and get to the bottom of it. Get help while it's little. And it's okay. There's not one thing wrong with getting help. Nobody should be ashamed to get help if you need it. You know what I've done many times? I would call Bethley's father. He was one of my best friends, and he was my pastor. And I would say, Dad, how would you handle this? My son learned that from me and my teaching. Texted me 2 weeks ago, Dad, this is happening in my marriage. What should I do about it? You know what? That was a little thing. So I was able to say, Matthew, do this and this and this and work on this and this and this, and it will help. And you know what he told me? It worked. You know why it worked? Because it was small. When things get huge in a marriage and you go for help, now you've got to work through major issues. And it takes a long time. And sometimes people aren't willing to do it, and that's why marriages end in divorce. The conflict gets so big, it takes so long to unravel it that we just give up on it. My dear friends, listen to me. Conflict is normal in a marriage. Hearts get broken in a marriage. But what the Bible is trying to tell us is, if you will live Christianity and you will nail those words, the fact of the matter is you can handle any conflict that comes to your marriage. You forgive, you love, you make it right, you get over it, you move on. And what happens is your marriage gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Pastor talked about his parents today. My mom and dad, I told you last night, Christmas Eve, will celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary. There were times it was really hard. My dad was an angry man. My mother, I say this gently, is a very stubborn lady. Between Dad's anger, my mom's stubbornness, between my dad's silence, my dad didn't handle things, he ignored them. My mother's frustrations, we had some hard years in that marriage. But my mom and dad stayed committed and kept working at it. They kept growing and they kept working at it. And you know what? They're old now. They're both almost 80. They're way on up in years now. They're getting on up there. They're slowing down. My parents are funny because they keep talking to me. My mother will say, I'm really concerned about your dad. He's getting old and he's really slowing down. And my dad will say, son, I'm really concerned about your mom. As we're getting older, she's really slowing down. They're both concerned about their getting old, and they keep sharing that with me. But you know what's amazing? My mom and dad had struggles when they were young, but they kept working at it. They kept growing. They refused to give up on their marriage. They kept making things right and taking steps towards what is right. And now they're at an age of their life where things are really good. They hold hands now. They spend Saturdays together at, do you guys have flea markets in Seattle? They love to go to flea markets. Their idea of a wonderful date is holding hands and strolling through a flea market. It's my mom and dad. They now have money. My dad never went to high school or never finished high school, so he's uneducated. So they didn't have a lot of money. My dad worked long hours, 2 jobs. We had a tiny little house. We drove old cars. But my dad now has a new truck. He's so proud of it. He paid cash for it. It's my dad. And things are good now. God's plan is that you stay working on the conflicts because, my dear friends, it pays off. You can go old together. Beth and I are not old. You know that, right? Because we're the youngs. Y'all got that? We are not old. But we have been married 31 years this August. And you know something? It's worth it to stay married that long. Because I'm married to my best friend. And we're at a stage of life to where we got grandkids. How cool is that? You can play with them and send them home. It's beautiful. It's just glorious. See, what a wonderful time. And God's plan is for you to be the same way. You're young couples in this room today. Make your marriage something amazing. Handle your conflicts wisely. And if you will, you'll get older. And the older you get, the happier it is. And you'll come to the end of your life. I heard a guy say the other day, he was a comedian, and he said, God's plan is that the two of you become one. And he said, the older you get, you really do become one. Because she has a good right hip, and you have a good left hip, and together you have one good hip. And she has, her right leg doesn't work right, and his left leg doesn't, and so they walk together through life. And there's a little silliness to that, but you know something? It is God's plan. I don't know how long Beth and I are going to live. My grandfather on my mother's side lived to be 97. And he was walking on his own at 96. So he was in pretty good health all the way to the end. The last few months of his life, he didn't know me. He was in hospice, and I went to see him. And I said, hey, Grandpa, it's Dave. And my grandpa said, how do you know Dave? And I said, no, I am Dave. He said, well, that's nice. Dave's a nice guy, isn't he? I was like, yes, he is, isn't he? Keep it coming, keep it coming. He never did know who I was. But he was pretty healthy. Well, if that's true, if Beth and I lived, to be 100, we got a few more years together. Isn't that going to be exciting? We're just going to be in love all the way to the end. It's God's plan for you. Conflicts are normal. Learn to handle them biblically. And my dear friends, marriage becomes heaven on earth. That's God's plan. I don't necessarily always do this, but would there be one or two questions you'd want me to answer about conflicts before I sit down and David comes? Any question you'd want to ask me or Bethley about conflicts? Any question at all? We're here to serve you. It's my last session with you, but I'd be happy to answer any question you have about conflicts. Is there anything at all? All right, let's skip the first question. Those are always hard. Is there a second question? Anything at all? Okay, are we good? Ladies, you have any question for my wife about conflict? Anything at all? Okay, David, I think it's all yours.